This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting from the UN Climate Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh. I'm Amy Goodman. A prominent Ukrainian climate activist and environmental lawyer has been suspended from the UN climate talks after she and others disrupted a Russian event here inside COP27. During the event, Svitlana Romanko and others accused Russia of committing war crimes in Ukraine. That's Svitlana Romanko and the other activists removed from the event, then had their COP27 badges suspended. Svitlana has since left Egypt over fears for her safety following the incident. She's joining us now. She founded the Stand with Ukraine campaign and Razom We Stand. We last spoke to her in April, shortly after she co-wrote an article with Bill McKibben headlined "The Ukraine War is a Decision Point. Banks should stop funding the fossil fuel industry forever." Svitlana Romanko, welcome back to Democracy Now! We're going to go to this protest in a minute, but a quick thought on our first segment. The joining together of the issue of climate justice and human rights with the long-time imprisonment of Alaa Abdel Fattah and the demand for his freedom that has so reverberated throughout this summit.
Hello, Amy. Thank you so much for having me here again with Democracy Now! And truly, while our treatment in Explosion and event at COP27 that tried to give some legitimacy to the murderous Russian regime is appalling, we also think of other activists today, earlier, and also activists in Uganda and Tanzania who were multiple times detained for their ECOP opposition, and also Mozambique and across African countries and in many other countries where dictatorships are alive and well. And they all are locked in prison for speaking out. And people must have the right to stand up and speak out for freedom, democracy, and climate justice. Our thoughts now, and my thoughts personally, go today to those activists who can't leave their insecure spaces, who are imprisoned, and their families and friends. And I would also like to add here that the victory over one petro-dictator can spell freedom from petro-colonialism for the entire planet if we seize the moment to move away from fossil fuels. And it has been very clear that fossil fuels fund dictatorships all over the world, in many countries. They also fund destruction in my own country, because when I'm just speaking, 40% or even more of citizens of my country, Ukrainians, are lost access to electricity, to heating of their homes, and it's -1 degree Celsius right now outside. And I am with my team as well, who works from Ukraine, who supported climate talks greatly, and I just can say that we have to stay united. We have to think of those of us who lost access to their basic rights as earlier, and we have to do everything to fight dictatorships across the world, because as soon as we can end the dictatorships in countries like Russia and many other countries, African continent, and Egypt included, the sooner we all can live in peace. And one of the ways that we expected from this climate summit to happen was a phasing out oil, gas, and coal, strong language in their statement, which will help us and enable these fossil fuel revenue-empowered regimes and democratic, autocratic, to stop existing and to stop waging wars and conflicts and imprisoning activists.
Svitlana Romanko, can you talk about the protests that you engaged in here that had you thrown out of the UN Climate Summit and why you chose to do that? You're a long-time climate activist in Ukraine.
Yes, of course. And what I said exactly, because I just stood up at the very beginning and I just started speaking directly to the panel. This panel consisted of Minister of Energy, Environment of Russia, of Special Climate Envoy of Russia, and also some business and academia, and there were a lot of their representatives, and I believe also Gazprom and Rosneft, Rosatom representatives sitting and just taking happy photos before the event started. And myself, with other activists, have been sitting as well and watching them and thinking, how dare you to come here in the heart of climate talks while you are destroying our climate and while you are destroying my country and other countries and while with your outrageous war, and you are destroying actually the freedoms and democracy all over the world while waging this war on climate with your fossil fuel reserves and fossil fueled war. And what I did, I stood up and I actually did what every Ukrainian dreamed about doing, that when they meet the same person in the same room. I just said them exactly as following. You are a terrorist state and you are genociding, torturing and killing us daily for 9 months. Your oil and gas is killing us. You are guilty in war crimes, in a climate crisis, environmental crisis, and you should not be here, but in front of the International War Crimes Tribunal. And then other activists started to stood up and they shouted that Russia is guilty in war crimes, and they shouted how despicable they are, and until we all have been removed from this official Russian side event. Also, just to highlight the importance of why this event exactly, because Russian delegation was present in big numbers, but we have never seen them attending public spaces or communicating. And this was only one and only official Russian side event where we wanted to use our freedom of speaking and freedom of attending public gathering to confront people who came from the country which is in open war and broke all international laws, and in particular rule of law principle, destroying our environment hugely and destroying our people and destroying in a way of just half of territory of Ukraine right now. And for me it also was a very symbolic fight, and no regret related to that at all, because facing and confronting Russia, I in a way confronted any injustice on the planet, any dictatorships which are fueled by fossil fuels and which use their revenues to wage their war and conflicts against the peaceful citizens of the planet.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us, Svitlana.